Guys, this is Dawn. Welcome to Gulf Coast October, and in this series I'm going to be reading my book, one chapter per video. There's more information in the description. Let's start with the back of the book. Enchanted and Bay St Yaya by Dawn Reynolds. Deary Lallemand returns home to the Mississippi Gulf Coast to start over. There she learns she has many friends in this world as well as in the spiritual realm, waiting to help her grow and find herself. Her conscience matures while she learns to trust her intuition and sort out all the gumbo-ya-ya in her head. Her dreams manifest when she finally trusts her own spiritual process, regardless of what others think. Unfortunately, her old demons keep threatening her, and to make matters worse, a stalker wants her dead. Alright, that's the back of the book. You want to hang out with me while I read this? I'd love to have you. Welcome back. Enchanted and Bay St Yaya. Chapter 1. The Big Amends. I was dreaming of a small serrated hand tool. It was sawing a wooden magnolia figure in half, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. I awoke to the sound of a loud cricket in the window. It had been chirping in unison with the saw. Nature gave me a bedtime prompt, and it seemed my subconscious used it to amplify my anxiety. This was my brain's way of processing a simple conversation that I'd had the evening before. Simple on the outside, another life-changing seed planted on the inside. Then again, life is a journey. We don't stop until we're dead. Or do we? I can't do it, I said. Oh, it's only hard because you're making it hard, I promise, she replied. That was basically the last part of the chat I'd had with Pauline last night, and that was fine all right because it clicked just enough to settle me before bed. Maybe because she was the last person I had talked to before I fell asleep, but also maybe because she gets it. I know in my deepest depths that if anyone gets it, Pauline gets it. I have so many wrongs to make right. Pauline lives up in Tennessee, but she's still one of my favorite people to confide in. She was the one who would walk me through the self-hatred. She promised that once I expressed true regret for acting so rotten throughout the hardest times of my life, I'll naturally start learning to love myself. This seems totally contradictory to what was modeled to me in my upbringing. One of my many bass-ackwards life lessons was that if I screw up to lie your pants off and get out of there quick. Initially, I felt relief just thinking about it, but then the rest of the story played through in my mind with the same old outcome of having to hide from everything. Growing up when you're already grown is painful. I stayed in bed for a few more hours, listening to the cricket that now sounded more like a pushy alarm clock rather than a metronome for abstract solutions. It was only 6 o'clock in the morning, but I knew it was already 80 degrees and sure awful muggy. Thank God for cut-off shorts and tank tops. I mean, really, it could be the official gear of the deep, dirty South. Am I right? After gearing up, I counted out enough just in case money. I changed my shoes twice because flip-flops seemed inappropriate, but I never made it far in those stupid striped canvas shoes without wishing I was wearing flip-flops, so those lasted from the bedroom to the kitchen. I really should donate those. I thought about making coffee, but the smell would probably wake up the whole house. Anyway, I think coffee always tastes better when somebody else makes it. I noticed as I was slipping out the door that my brother's dogs never seemed to have the same reaction upon my leaving as my arriving. They lazily acknowledged me. Murky's eyebrows took turns yanking his attention from me to nothing, me to nothing, me to nothing. Moose flat out yawned in annoyance that I thought for a minute that he might care. The hole used to open around 4 a.m., but they never had enough decaf that early in the morning. They would make one single pot around 6 o'clock, and June said nobody orders any again until around 3 p.m. But she was always willing to put on a pot. I often thought of this as an insult, as if she was calling me a nobody, seeing as 3 p.m. tended to be when she would see me mosey in. But that was when I'd first got to town. I guess I still was not regular enough in the mornings to change the tradition of things. Honestly, what I really wanted was half-calf with a good helping of hazelnut creamer, but making a whole pot of decaf to fill only half of a tall to-go cup made me feel like a jerk, and hazelnut really was too fancy for this place. The day they carry flavored milks is the day the needy hipsters have completely taken over this side of the highway. Oh God, please no. I made my way to the hole. I know that's a funny name for a place, but just like most silly things, there's a story behind it. The original name was the Dancing Pastry. The sign on top of the joint was decorated in boogie and donuts and a king cake wearing sunglasses. The lettering for the words were configured of what was supposed to be Mardi Gras beads, but you'd only know it if someone had told you. It disappeared long ago in a hurricane and is probably at the bottom of the bay or even clear out in the middle of the Gulf of Mexico somewhere. So the sign was replaced. Not too terribly long after the new sign was up, Joe Aloysius, pronounced Joe Allo Wish Us, while in a late-night whiskey stupor, was dancing with his fully loaded antique AKS in the parking lot. He sang out loud to the tune in his head while he twirled and swirled in the hot southern night with his precious gun. Like any true gentleman, he took the lead, and in a romantic notion, he dipped her back and accidentally pulled her trigger. He blew a hole the size of a tire right through the sign. It was so loud that it woke the birds, but Joe Aloysius was so drunk that he only made a confused face, as if his date had burped or something. "That's all right, sweetheart," he whispered. He continued to sing to her while spinning in circles, and they disappeared down the street into the night, hence the hole. One of my favorite things about this place has always been the nostalgia. As a kid, I only ever saw the bright orange seats and dark brown particle board tables through the window in passing. It had a high section, too, with bar stools, and a great view to the goings-on in the back of the diner's kitchen. I couldn't see that from the road, though, so all I could do was make it all up in my head. None of the elders would ever let us swing in, as it was a known hangout for dirty old men and unfortunate women. But I knew when I was all grown up I would just go on my own. Like how I always wanted my mom to pull over by the track so I could pick some of those bright red crimson clovers. They were just roadside weeds to her, but it drove me crazy wondering what they smelled like. Something that red has to smell like cherry punch. I was an adult before I finally learned any different. They just smell like regular old clovers, and they scratch your nose. "Morning, lady," June hollered out. "Hi, June," I said. She held up an empty glass coffee pot with a bright orange rim and cocked her head. "No, not yet." "Well, okay," I replied. "Might as well let me, kiddo, before it gets busy. You just come on get you some when you're ready, alrighty?" "Yes, ma'am." My mama may not have raised me right, but I am most definitely Southern. Southerners are taught manners. I was convinced I wasn't staying around very long this morning, but knowing me, I am just lying to myself. Joe Aloysius, Bird, and Mary were there, taking up 2 booths between them. Mary is a larger lady that, like me, loves her overalls. I just don't see how she wears them all summer long. You've been somewhat introduced to Joe Aloysius. He is tall, with black wavy hair that curls up in the humidity. None of his teeth touch each other, his skin is olive, and his voice is like some raspy jazz music on the wind. Bird is a stocky man with a large bulbous nose and thick glasses that tint to brown in the sunlight. He's gray-headed and keeps it shaved in the summertime. He wears a black and white City of New Orleans Police Department trucker hat. When he's outside, he wears it bill side front. Inside the hole, he turns it around, and on super hot, sweaty days, he takes it off completely. "Uh-oh, here comes trouble," he said, giving me a wink. I kissed the air next to his damp cheek and slid in across the table from him. "You going to church this morning?" I asked him. "No, not today. I need a shower before I can do mass. Anyway, I went yesterday, and that new lady's perfume was so strong I could taste it." "Where's she from, anyway?" I asked. "Long Beach, I think," he said, rolling his eyes. "Then sit somewhere else," Mary snapped. "You've been sitting in that same spot front and center for 30 years, making everybody stare at the back of your fat, sweaty head. No one can see the priest, the host, or nothing." Joe Aloysius agreed. "I do tend to feel like I'm saying yes, Father, to the back of your head." "Well, that's just great." Bird yanked his hat bill around to the front of his head, dug some coins and wrinkled bills out of his pocket, and slammed them on the table. "Good day, young lady," he told me. I could feel my cheeks flush. The whole thing triggered my anxiety. Mary picks on Bird so much you'd think that she had a crush on him. "You're a real asshole to him sometimes," I whispered. I filled a to-go cup with decaf and tossed my pack over my shoulder. Mary noticed I was leaving now, too, and tried to take it personally. "Oh, hell, I didn't run you off, too, did I?" "No, ma'am, I've got something that I need to do today. I'm just pussyfooting around it." As I walked out the door, through the sound of the bell, I could hear Joe Aloysius tell Mary that I was heading to Biloxi. There was a pause. Mary looked confused. June, the waitress, walked up to the table and chimed in. "Cemetery." Now Mary knew what was up. This had been on my mind for a while. These graveyards are one of the reasons I moved home after all these years. My elders had all been gone for so long, all I had left were their resting places. There were so many heart-to-hearts I missed out on. I was so selfish. I was usually drunk and absolutely useless. They all loved me anyway. Biloxi's about a 45-minute drive from the bay, but I didn't have a car. The main drag is a highway that runs parallel to the shores of the Gulf of Mexico. The water is brown and lazy. The sun rises here. It has done so every morning of my life, whether I was here or not. The sunrise is my friend. I don't call her the Dawn. I just call her Dawn. She's easy to talk to. She reflects a million sparkles that stretch out across the water further than I can mentally process. The only folks I would usually see out this early on this stretch are local hardcore beachcombers. Lots of folks around here get crafty with old oyster shells and catfish bones. Have you ever seen an altar to Christ made with a skull from a hardhead catfish? Or a wind chime with driftwood and cabbage shells? Or a necklace from jingle shells and mermaid toenail? There is magic to be made when local people show such gratitude for the discarded parts of nature. Some people make a living off of it. Any festival around here will have at least one booth of oyster shell Christmas ornaments. It's deeply cultural and sacred. The 24-hour trolley services that ran up and down the coast had different lines that went by cute little names. On this particular day, I figured I'd hitch the gamble hop. It didn't pick up until Long Beach, and even after that, I had a long and complicated plan of how I was going to get to where I was going. I got lucky, however, when I recognized the driver that was getting off of work, as we'd had a good conversation a few weeks before. His girlfriend had just had a baby, and the hospital wasn't far from where I was going, so he offered me a straight-shot ride in his fancy Ramblar marlin. Thankfully, my bike fit in the back. I was wearing shorts, and the seats were vinyl, but a quick ride in a car with a hot butt beats public transportation any day. We pulled into the Biloxi National Cemetery, and I was completely overwhelmed. He said he'd stay and help me find my grandparents' site, but I knew he had somewhere that he had to be. He needed to go do what he needed to do, and I needed to do what I needed to do. Luckily, the office manager of the cemetery was sitting at his desk, and the door was wide open, even though it was so early in the morning. He gave me a map of the grounds and circled where I needed to go. It was easy enough. I could actually see the mausoleum from the office. It startled me that they were above ground. I never knew anyone that was laid to rest above the ground before. Also, it had me a little nervous, as I had wanted to light candles and get a little weird. Thankfully, when I got there, the markers were facing the back fence, and I was out of view of anything living. I leaned my bike against the fence and tried to smooth my hair out like a ragamuffin going in for a job interview. I thought I was going to be more nervous, but my nerves got calmer as I got closer, and then there they were. Parker Jean Lallemand and Lantana Fincher out of Lallemand. It felt so strange. I knew they were gone, but I'd never had true closure. I didn't attend either of their services. They died 10 years apart, my grandma going first, but by the time Papa left, I still hadn't got my shit together to show up for that either. So that was my first regret. I traced my grandmother's name with my finger, and tears started to stream down my cheeks. I reminded myself to breathe. But other than that, I went blank. I didn't know what to do with myself. I just stood there with my fingers in the nooks of this fancy marble wall and this fancy schmancy memorial ground with my ratty cut-off shorts, second-hand flip-flops, and I bawled. I hadn't really cried over either of them yet, and I wasn't sure if I was doing it right. But it felt like an explosion. After the initial shock of it felt kind of good, so I let it roll. I don't recall how long that went on for, but at some point I had the image of my grandma puckering her lips and rolling her eyes, and then I burst out laughing. All right, enough of that, I said softly. I sat down, crisscross applesauce, and pulled my pack around to the front of me. I retrieved some items out of it, one by one, and I held them up, saying what they were as if my grandparents were actually there watching their most troubled grandchild performing a cheesy magic trick. Candle white for purity, lantana petals for grandma, vodka for papa, incense to cleanse the area, holy water to anoint it as secret. I opened the holy water bottle and awkwardly sloshed it around in the air. My mind could see my grandma Lan laughing and telling Papa, "See that park? Now our space is anointed and sacred." And then Papa replied simply, "Oh." I lit the candles. "I wanted to come here and express regret about some things," I said as I pulled a folded up piece of paper out of my pocket. My hand shook as I opened it. "Papa, you first. I was a brat. I stole money from you a few times, and I felt guilty about it, but I was too scared to tell you. I remember you looking for it, and I felt so guilty. I was too selfish to be honest. I'm sorry I totaled your car, and I'm sorry I used to drink all your vodka." It was sincere, but I realized my tears had almost completely subsided at this point, and I was a little bit worried that whatever had come to the surface was retreating. "And Grandma, if I could go back, I would have not snuck boys upstairs. I would have done all my own laundry, and yours too. I would have done all the dishes, made dinner, learned how to drive, and I wouldn't have had sex in the pool. Actually, Papa, that last one is for you, seeing as how you were the one that had to constantly adjust the chemicals, and I've always wondered how much of that was my fault." I knew these people were dead and gone, but my face got hot and I was embarrassed. Just then, two cardinals, one red and one tan, a male and a female, flew into the covered area and landed right next to me. At first, I thought it was just two crazy birds who hadn't expected to see a human back here. But then an overwhelming sensation came over me. I could smell my old house. I hadn't been able to step foot in the place in more than 12 years, but I could smell it plain as day. It smelled like a mix of celery, onions, and bell pepper cooking in butter. It smelled like dried eucalyptus. It smelled like chlorine. And it smelled like medicated throat spray. I closed my eyes and clenched my fists close to my heart, and for a brief moment I thought I was standing in our old living room in front of them both. I could even hear Papa's news broadcast playing in the background. I took it all in, and I wanted to stay forever. Then I realized the birds were a sign from my loved ones, and I opened my eyes fast so I wouldn't miss them. They hadn't left. They had waited for me to see that they were still there. I was afraid to breathe. I didn't want to scare them off. They both made eye contact with me, and through my tears I could see them shifting their stance from left to right. After what seemed like a beautiful long time, they slowly hopped to the edge of the walkway. They both turned back one last time, then took flight and were gone. I was calm, I was in awe, I had gratitude, I was at peace, I was forgiven. The timing was perfect. Moments later I saw a sparkling black and red Ramblar marlin idling into the cemetery. My candles had gone out on their own, and the wax had already hardened. The incense was done, and I was able to throw everything into my bag. My acquaintance who'd given me a ride to the cemetery had come back to fetch me. "What are you doing back?" I asked. "I need to go back to your side of town for a minute. I thought I'd check on you and see if you needed a ride back." It was an offer I couldn't refuse. I was emotionally drained, and I wanted to get home. It was still pretty early in the morning, and I hadn't planned on being home until dinner time. I figured I'd grab a bite to eat, then go check on Bird and see if he's still pissed off at Mary. Thank you for that. I'm going to try to upload some kind of consistently with these chapters so that people don't lose interest. But anyways, I am dyslexic, and I have worked on this book for 2 years. And then, anyway, so thanks for hanging out with me, and I will see you in the next chapter.